Hey, it's Heidi from A Lively Hope. Welcome back to episode 2 of my 2026 Stitch Book series. Today we're going to make a very simple running stitch page and talk a little bit about what slow stitch is and why you might want to use it. Just answering a few questions that I have been getting and that I see fairly often on other slow stitching channels. So this is super simple. It's probably the most simple page I will be doing in this series. I've been a little bit worried that it's too simple to share, but we're just going to go with it. So thanks for being here, and let's get to work. So today I've got my blank fabric page that's pre-cut. I've got my loose thread jar as well as my giant thread tangle. And I'm planning to just do some running stitch today. This is a friction pen. It is heat erasable. I've got a needle, actually 2, and my scissors. So my plan is I'm just going to roughly sketch a rectangle. Actually, let's see. Will that work? Yeah. This is my watercolor palette. I only have black on this one right now. I'm going to just trace this with my friction pen. This will be the outline of what I'm going to make today. I have kind of an idea in mind, a loose idea of just filling this with running stitches, all vertical, and just a whole array of colors and different lengths. I'm going to be working mostly from this jar because this is where I put things that I have used a few strands from. This is for if it still has all 6 strands. I might pull some out of here, but for the most part, I'm going to try to work from this jar and use 2 or 3 strands at a time. So I've got my needle threaded. This is just a short length of thread. I'm going to tie my knot. I really like to use a thimble most of the time. I'm going to start from the back so the knot will be on the back. And I'm just going to come up right on that line and just start going. This line will be kind of a guide for me to make my stitches fairly straight. I'm not even going to worry too much about that. I'll just load up my needle with a few stitches. I'm not caring too much if they're completely even. So I just load and pull it through after a few stitches. So you'll see as I do running stitch, I put the end of my needle into my thimble like this, and I use my fingers to hold it firmly against the thimble. And then I use my left hand, my non-dominant hand, to move the fabric back and forth. And then I push and pull that through. Now that I've come to the end, I'm going to come right up on that line. I would really like to have this be kind of a hard edge to my stitching. So I'm going to just have that be the end of that row. And come back up on the other side. And I'll fill in this row, or as much of it as I can before I run out of thread. I'm not paying too close of attention to if these stitches line up or don't line up. If you'd like for them to be more even, of course, you could do that differently. I'm just kind of letting it go where it goes as far as how big the stitches are. Okay, now I'll tie this off and start a new color. One tip for if you are doing a lot of running stitch in an area is to go back and forth along the fabric rather than always starting on the same end. It makes it more even and it keeps the fabric from, what is the word I'm thinking of? Warping, I guess. It helps it to lie more flat and not get scrunched up or pulled in a certain direction. So I have just been using up the threads as I randomly pull them out of here, doing as many lines as I can with the thread I have. This was a longer piece, so I will have more, and that's okay with me. I'm just going to keep going. It's the next day now. I stopped filming because we live up north and it gets dark at 3:30. So we're going to finish this today. As I've been working on this, I have been a little bit worried that it's much too simple to be sharing. So I would love to hear your opinion. This is definitely one of the more simple pages that I will be making. I plan to do some more intricate pieces and some different techniques, but it felt like this would be a pretty good place to start. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is this much too simple? Is it just right for where you are? Is it, I don't know, challenging? I also wanted to touch on a question that I get a lot and that I see a lot on other channels, which is, what is slow stitch and what do you do with it? And part of the reason I wanted to do such a simple project for my Stitchbook series is to address that question, those questions. Slow stitch it could be many different forms of stitching. But in my mind, slow stitching is more about the feel of the work and the meditative quality of the work rather than the finished product. So a really quick way to offend a lot of slow stitchers would be to say, and what do you do with that? I was talking to a woman. I do a lot of art markets, and I was talking to a woman over the summer at an art market, and she said, I hate it when people ask me that. What do I do with it? I just maintain my sanity with it. And I think it could be the same. It could be looked at the same as maybe doodling in an art journal or journaling that you don't actually keep. Maybe your morning pages where it's more about the practice of pen on paper and less about the outcome. So often slow stitch is more about this time that I'm taking to slow down and add some stitches into this fabric. And yes, it makes a beautiful pattern, and I have the side benefit of using up some of my excess thread. And in my case, in this instance, I am planning to use this in a larger project, which is my stitch book. But if all that I did was sit for a few minutes and create some running stitches in a bit of fabric, but it calmed my breathing and it calmed my worried mind, whatever worries I may be having, that in itself is enough. It does not need to be an elaborate piece of art in order to be of benefit to me or to you. So there are varying opinions on what qualifies as slow stitching. And just because of the nature of who I am and what I believe, I think we need to make more room for people rather than less. So I enjoy knitting, especially pretty mindless knitting. That's what I choose to do on long car rides, or even in the evening sometimes when any of my other, many other projects feel more, what's the word? I guess more taxing than enjoyable. I have a lot of projects going on and ouch, sorry. I always jump when I poke myself. My family has been trained to not respond if I ever jump like that and say, ouch. For years, they would always say, oh, are you okay? Like, do you need a Band-Aid? And it's just my natural response and I'm fine. I don't really want people to acknowledge it. So now they just sit stone-faced and try not to make eye contact with me. And I'll let them know if it is indeed a worse wound or just a surprise that I poked myself once again. Okay, where was I? I don't know. Completely lost my train of thought. Oh, more room at the textile art table. So I enjoy some mindless knitting or some crochet or English paper piecing, all of those hand stitching projects. I think you could qualify that as slow stitching. You may have a different opinion. It may mean something very specific to you as far as using only recycled fabrics, or, making maybe a scroll that doesn't have any more of a function than to house your stitches and to create a little mindfulness in your day. If you were to come to my house and say, can I join you for some slow stitching? And you got out a knitting project where you had to follow a pattern, and I sat down to work on something like this, I'm not going to turn you away. I'm not going to say, oh, that's not actually slow stitching. Though I have seen people who have very strong opinions on the internet who would turn you away. That's not what I'm about here. You are welcome. Whatever form your mindfulness and stitching takes. So I hope that answers that question. Slow stitching in its most basic form is a way to create mindfulness and beauty and to help us slow down. Take a few minutes from our day and create something. See there, I pulled too tight, so I'm going to need to give myself a little ease right here by pulling back. So I've finished stitching. And as a reminder, I used this friction erasable pen to make the outline. So I'm just going to use my warm iron to erase that. Which is very fun. So that is page number 2 done. You'll notice some wonkiness. That does not bother me at all. I like that it looks handmade. If I wanted to do this absolutely perfectly, I could do it on a sewing machine. That's not what it's about. The wonkiness shows that your hand was involved. I love how that turned out. I'll see you next week for another page.